The best time to start was 5 years ago. The second best time to start is today. And today, I'm going to talk about how thinking like an ultra runner can help you overcome major challenges. This video will be part metaphorical and part historical, as I take you through the 4 changes that I made to address my lower back issues, which have positively impacted my life and my trail running career the most. For those of you that don't have back issues, this video may still be for you. Just replace my back issues with the challenges you face and see if the approach that I took also resonates with you. Now let's head down to my home gym so we can talk about the rest of this video, and we'll be back here to talk about this inversion table with change number 3. And if you are new to this channel, my name is Scott Miller, and this is Trail Ambitions, where I talk about things that may improve your trail running. When I say thinking like an ultra runner, what I mean is longer term thinking, as opposed to a sprinter, which I equate to short-term thinking or quick, immediate gratification. I brainstormed some ultra runner characteristics and approaches, and I came up with the following list. Start small, one step, followed by the next step. Keep moving forward. Break things down into small, achievable chunks. Gamify what you can to increase motivation and keep your mind off negative thoughts. Identify points of interest or key goals to focus on. Prepare an overall plan that has contingencies, but that is also fluid and adaptive. And have an emergency plan if things go really bad. And lastly, consistency. Sticking with it, staying consistent. Doing your own brainstorming exercise like this may be beneficial to you as well, even if you're not into running ultra distances. So what has helped you succeed and enjoy trail running can also be used to help you succeed and enjoy other areas of your life. If you do decide to brainstorm your own list, please add them to the comments below. It would be interesting to read them. To start, I chose to focus on my back issues because 1, it was physically interfering with my trail running. And number 2, it had been going on for most of my life and it didn't have a simple fix. And number 3, it had reached a level that I wanted to see a change bad enough. And don't worry, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail describing all my back issues. I'm sure most of you don't care. I'm just going to share a few relevant details to provide some context behind my thinking and actions. With that said, I'm not an expert in medical matters, chronic pain, or anything like that. I don't know your specific situation, and you don't necessarily know enough details about my situation. So please use this video to perhaps spark some ideas or expand your thinking, but make sure to consult with your own doctors and specialists before making any changes. Okay, here we go. Lower back issues. I've had lower back issues for most of my life. My back would just go out. For those of you that have never experienced your back going out, this ChatGPT response is pretty accurate. You can pause the video and read it if you're interested. But basically, it is a sudden onset of back pain and dysfunction, and often resulting in limited movement and significant discomfort. This can range from functional with pain to stuck in bed for a period of time. For me, one of my hips would rotate forward, putting my pelvis out of alignment. Once it gets out of alignment, my muscles have to work harder to hold it in place because it's not in its normal state. Injury will eventually occur, inflammation will increase, and eventually it gives out. It can be quite painful, and needless to say, my trail running comes to a complete stop until it recovers. This is a cycle that has repeated too many times in my life, and I had reached a point where I wanted to fix it for real, not just temporary. As a reminder, what we're talking about here are things that are not new, things that you have been dealing with for years. Maybe ignoring them, hoping they would fix themselves, but they never have. So in my case, I took my ultra runner mindset and started to focus on the root and contributory causes. If you've been dealing with something for a while, you probably have a pretty good idea of the root or contributory causes. If not, there are plenty of resources between Google, AI, or doctors and specialists. In my case, I had a pretty good idea. Not necessarily how to fix it, but what was causing or contributing to the flare-ups. The main causes were sitting, the amount of time I've needed to sit, or the posture I was sitting in, whether I was tired or not, so not enough sleep, poor sleep, or having a low immune system, an intense incident, such as a sneeze, or a trip or fall, weak core strength or stabilization, or another injury, such as an ankle sprain on one side of my body impacting other parts of my body because I had to shift part of my gait to compensate for that weak ankle and therefore overusing muscles in other parts of my body. And through awareness and intention, I can focus on these items to reduce them, which will help my back situation, but it's not going to fix anything long term. In this analogy, thinking like a sprinter, looking short term, you may think I need to go to a doctor, other drugs or medications that I can take to reduce certain things. Is there a surgery that will solve this issue? And each of those have their place, but not here. Whereas an ultra runner mindset, thinking long term, is thinking about what are the small adjustments that I can make to my body over time, such as strength training or mobility improvements. I may continue with the following questions to dig a little deeper. What changes can I make every day that over time will work towards mitigating or managing these causes? How do I stay motivated to continue with the changes? How can I manage costs if necessary? And although this is very high level, it did lead me to my plan. My approach was to define parallel paths to a solution. Your ideas or your plans don't necessarily all need to start at the same time. And they don't necessarily need to not start at the same time. Sometimes solutions need to work together to be effective. Here are the 4 changes that I made that had the most impact on my back health. My first change was purchasing a sit-stand desk. This is a desk that you can sit at, or it's motorized so you can lift it up and stand at the same desk. It gives you the option of either sitting or standing. I got this idea early on when I started hearing that sitting was the new smoking and hearing about how bad sitting was for your body, especially after going for a run in the morning and then sitting at my desk for the rest of the day. It just seemed to, tighten up my hips even more. Initially, I would stand for as long as I could. And then once I became too tired, I would then sit for the rest of the day. Over time, as I stood at the desk, I started to become able to stand longer throughout the day until I could stand the whole day. That period took me about a month of being extremely tired as my body was getting used to standing for that long. But as my body became stronger and I was able to stand longer, pretty soon it was no longer an issue. I will say that because I tend to stand at my desk, this being my home office, in socks, I purchased a small pad to stand on, which made it much more comfortable on my feet. Now, if you're doing this in an office, wearing comfortable shoes would also serve the same purpose. I also picked up some of these fit balls. They're basically about that thick. They have some of these ribbed things on one side, flat on the other side, and you can use these to stand on. So they help you with your balance, with core strength. And so I would use these under my desk. Otherwise, I found that I would end up while I'm standing just leaning against my desk, where if I have these below my feet, sometime I would play with them with my feet, stand up on them, and it kind of kept me active rather than just leaning against my desk. My regular chiropractic appointments that I was doing almost monthly basically stopped. I just didn't have as many back issues after I started standing more often. My second change was a core strength and movement program. Despite my desk change, I knew my back was still susceptible to other causes. But with the success, I did have momentum. I had motivation. I knew strengthening my core was necessary, since it had worked for me a few years back when I was getting headaches from bad posture. Strengthening my core helped with my headaches while running and hiking. But I struggled to stay disciplined with doing core exercises. So I needed to make a change. I decided to make a game out of it. My plan was to devise a very simple core exercise, one that I would be able to do no matter where I was or how much time I had. It was that simple. So basically, where I started was as soon as I got out of bed, I would do push-ups. At first, I could only do a few push-ups. I had been out of practice for a very long time. And as runners, you all know, we spend most of our time working on our lower part of our body and not on our upper part of our body. But push-ups also are a great core workout. So my plan was basically to get up each morning and do my push-ups. So I started with 2 push-ups. Very simple. Get up, drop down, 2 push-ups, continue on my day. The next day, 2 push-ups, continue on my day. After a short period of time, I started getting used to doing those push-ups and of course started thinking, really those 2 push-ups aren't really doing much for my core. I need to bump those up. So this is where the gamification came in. I had set a rule in my mind that if I chose to bump up to the next level of push-ups, I could not go back down. So when I chose to bump up my push-ups, it was a commitment that I was from that point forward going to do that many push-ups. At 2, I bumped up to 5. At a certain point, I decided, you know what? I bet I could do 10. I'm going to try 10 today because I believe I can do it and I want to do that going forward. So I bumped up to 10 and I started doing 10 push-ups each morning. After a certain period of time, I bumped to 15 and I continued that process for well over, I think it was 2 years, where I was just doing those push-ups every morning. And I got up to about 50, or I think it was 50 or 60 plus push-ups that I was doing in the morning. So clearly I was seeing strength gaining over that time, and that was motivating, but it was establishing this discipline of doing core exercises. And it was so simple. I didn't have to go to the gym. I didn't have to go outside. I didn't have to change clothes. I literally got up, went to the bathroom, came back down got to the floor, did my push-ups and carried on. So if I was traveling, if I was in a hotel, wherever, it did not matter. I did not have an excuse not to do my push-ups. In thinking like an ultra runner, I established a routine, a discipline through very small increments. Now, after several years of doing this, I was definitely increasing my strength. I was able to do a lot more push-ups than I could when I started. I was seeing a difference in my core. I was feeling more stable, stronger, but I wanted to now go further. So I decided at that point to come back on the push-ups a little bit and start to expand other core exercises. So I introduced planks, side planks, front planks, other type of stretching, not extensive stretching. I wanted to keep it within 5 to 10 minutes. I did not want to lose the time aspect of my workout. I will take you through my brief workout and show you the different exercises that I do. But as you'll see, it's very short. It's 5 to 10 minutes every morning. And because it's only 5 to 10 minutes, there's no weights. It's only body weight exercises. There's really no excuse not to do it. And I have found that it's probably going on 5 or 6 years now, that between the strength training and the mobility training of my workout, I have become much more stable and my core is much stronger. In fact, the test that I use now is that when I trip, when I sneeze or do those things that used to cause my back to perhaps go out, I immediately think which muscles engaged when I tripped. Back in the day, before I had this additional core strength, I tended to push out my core when I would try to catch myself. I'm not sure why. It was a backward reaction. Kind of like if you were wearing a weight belt around your waist and you push out against that weight belt to give you strength. So I'm not sure if that was ingrained from, lifting weights early on with a belt or something like that, but I had it reversed. So by working on core strength and tightening my muscles, pulling them in when I needed that strength, I would notice that when I fall, when I trip, I would tighten those muscles as opposed to pushing out. And that is where I got that stability from. Change number 3, I bought an inversion table. There are times where I have to sit. Could be in meetings or driving, and mountain running is pretty strenuous on the body. My hips can become very tight, and I've developed this sense over my lifetime where I can feel when they're not quite right or they're out of alignment. Continued use of my muscles when my hips are out of alignment will cause an overuse injury because they're being forced to do things that's not normal or in an angle that isn't normal for it. Continued use of my muscles with my hips out of alignment will just reinforce the hips being out of alignment. So actually strength training while my hips are out of alignment is not good for it. This misalignment and movement with the misalignment causes small injuries and increases inflammation, which begins a negative cycle. And this cycle increases injury, inflammation, until something gives. My back goes out. Historically, during one of these cycles, I would go see a chiropractor who would adjust me, which would then stop the cycle and start the healing process. Once it was strong enough, I'd then be good to go. Although I really like my chiropractor and I've learned a lot from him over the years, I continue to search for a more proactive way to manage these situations myself. So I bought an inversion table. Inversion tables are interesting. I've found very few professionals that will promote an inversion table. At the same time, I've found very few professionals that would say that inversion tables are not good. So basically, there's just been a lack of information. Reviews of these products on Amazon will show thousands of 5-star reviews. So clearly, something is working. I did see one video on the Bob and Brad channel, which, although being a bit goofy, these guys had some really good information. I'll link their channel below. Now when I feel the first sign of this cycle starting, I immediately use the inversion table to realign my body. This has almost eliminated my need for the chiropractor. Sorry, Dr. Pearson. On a side note, I have no idea if this is going to work for you. I do not know your situation. And since there is risk, I strongly recommend doing your own research before giving this a try. And if you are in Boulder, Colorado, and you do need a chiropractor, I strongly recommend checking out Dr. Craig Pearson at Canyon Chiropractics. I'll include a link in the description below as well. Although I haven't seen a chiropractor for some time, I would not hesitate to see a professional if I felt the risk was beyond what I was comfortable with. So be smart and make your own call. Here's how I use the inversion table. Position myself so I'm straight. Slowly rock back with the stop strap at about 45 degrees. I then breathe into the muscles around my hips, allowing them to relax. Sometimes I'll engage my left hip muscles and then release, and then my right hip muscles and release. I do this if I'm finding that I'm not able to get my muscles to relax as well. I then hang there for about 30 seconds. I'm listening or sensing for a release. For me, this is usually a small pop or a subtle but noticeable shift in my pelvis. After about 30 seconds, I'll return to a level or slightly upright position, wait for a few moments, and then repeat the process up to 2 more times. Sometimes it will take me a few times before my muscles fully relax. And sometimes I don't get a release, in which case I leave the inversion table and I try it again the next day. I try not to be on the table more than once a day, and I don't use it at all unless I feel I need to. The main thing to remember is when you are inverted, you don't want to twist. The cushioning part on your vertebrae is on the bottom side. So when you're inverted and you're twisting, there's nothing to protect it from bone against bone. So a lot of damage can happen if you are doing a lot of twisting while upside down. So I remain completely straight and just focus on relaxing my muscles to align my body, not trying to twist or stretch. I also don't view the inversion table as additive, such as strength training. I use it or view it as a tool to stop a negative cycle. Once the cycle is stopped, there's no reason to continue using it. Lastly, after finishing with the inversion table, I usually give my body a few moments or a little while to relax. Then I will do some back stretching, either on the floor or in bed, which may result in some realignment. Now that my muscles are relaxed and not trying to hold an inflamed area of my body that was out of alignment. By keeping my body aligned, I feel that I get more value out of my core strength activities, since I am building strength that is helping to hold my body in the correct position. The fourth change was an improvement and awareness of my running form. The first change was about identifying quick wins and initiating that first step. The second change was about identifying the long-term goals and devising a plan to get there regardless of how much time I had, and turning it into a game that would keep me motivated and continuing to want to do it. The third change was about finding ways to proactively address issues that could derail me, throw me off track, or stop me completely. This fourth change is about focusing on the techniques that will make me better or improve on the thing or the things that I want to improve on, and doing it in a way that provides positive benefits and reinforcements. This creates a larger positive cycle that keeps momentum going when you have those tougher moments where you just don't feel like continuing or you have doubts. I created a whole video where I described 10 techniques for more efficient running. In that video, I talk about running form, so I won't repeat that here, but please check out that video. I'll put a link up here as well as one in the description below. Again, when you are thinking like an ultra runner, there is plenty of time for things to go well. There's also plenty of time for things to go poorly, and there will most likely be both. Building many layers of momentum will help you through it. So those are my 4 main changes, but there is one additional item that I want to talk about, and it has to do with money and how you spend your money. There are a wide variety of budgets, but one thing about trail running is that it can be done very inexpensively. So it's accessible by most everyone. However, as we get more into the things that we love, we tend to spend more money on those same things. I would say that the ultra runner mindset is looking for things that will help keep you safe, help you over the long run, and ultimately healthy and able to do the things that you love. Looking over my past 20 plus years of trail running career, my body and the various issues that it has experienced, and where I've spent the most amount of money, it has been in these areas, which I'm listing in no particular order. Desk and the desk chair. As a working professional, I've spent a lot of time sitting at a desk, sometimes 14 hours a day. I've learned that a good chair is worth its weight in gold. And as I mentioned earlier, the sit-stand desk has been a game changer, but there are also times that you sit. So having a really good chair is important. By the way, if you don't work from home and you don't have these types of options at work, I would suggest talking to your employer to see what types of options are available. Next is a bed. After work, the next most time spent is probably in bed. Getting the best bed you can afford will be a major difference in your life. As an avid trail runner, your body needs good rest and recovery, period. Massage. I know this is considered a luxury item for many. However, I've been fortunate to be able to get a monthly massage for most of my running career. And I believe this has been a key factor in my ability to continue to do types of runs that I do as I've aged. Acupuncture. I've had monthly acupuncture sessions for the last 25 years. I view them as maintenance sessions. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here other than to say that health is something I highly value. I try to avoid drugs and medication wherever possible, and acupuncture is one of the ways that I do that. And lastly, food. The other way I focus on health is to eat healthy. My wife and I are both pescatarians, which is essentially vegetarians that eat fish. We probably spend more than some on food, but it is something we believe in. It is important to us, and we feel that we've benefited from it. As you can see, where I spend my money is not on the sport itself, but on the things that enable me to do my sport for the long run. And just to be clear, I'm not claiming that any of these changes or techniques or even what I spend my money on is anything new or amazing, but that's kind of the point. These things are accessible by just about everybody. So it comes down to taking that first step and then the second, by building momentum with consecutive small successes, staying motivated by knowing yourself and designing techniques or even games to keep you focused, being adaptable and creating contingency options, and having a backup emergency plan when things don't go just as you had hoped. As I mentioned at the beginning, the best time to make a change was 5 years ago. The second best time is today. What change are you going to make today? Thanks for watching.